My wife left for a wellness retreat in Vermont on a Thursday morning without kissing me goodbye, without leaving a note, and as I found out 7 hours later, without reserving a single room anywhere in the state. At first, I told myself it was just Helena being Helena. In 5 years of marriage, I had watched her turn distance into an art form. Not the cold, dramatic kind. Nothing that ever gave me something clean to push back against. Just a slow, quiet withdrawal like a tide going out, so gradually you don't notice until your feet are dry and the water is very far away. My name is Blake Mercer. I'm 32 years old, and I restore old wooden boats out of a workshop in Mystic, Connecticut. People bring me vessels that have been sitting in driveways for 20 years, hulls split and planks swollen and frames rotted through. I strip them back to the ribs and rebuild them from the keel up. It's slow work, honest work. You can't pretend a boat is seaworthy when it isn't. The water has a way of making liars pay for it immediately. I was good at my job. I was not, as it turned out, good at recognizing when the thing I was trying to keep afloat had already filled at the bottom, and I was just too tired to bend down and check. Helena worked in wealth management at a firm in Hartford. She was sharp and composed and beautiful in the way that made you feel slightly underdressed just standing next to her in your own kitchen. When we met, I thought that composure was confidence. 5 years in, I understood it differently. It wasn't that she was calm. It was that she had stopped letting anything reach her, including me. We hadn't had a real conversation in 4 months, not the kind where both people are actually present. She'd come home late, pour a glass of wine, and scroll through her phone while I made dinner, and the silence between us had become so ordinary that I'd stopped noticing it the way you stop noticing the sound of a highway near your house. It's always there. You just go quiet around it. The Thursday she left, I was in the workshop sanding a transom when I heard the front door close. Not slam. Helena never slammed anything. Just close. That particular click of the latch that sounded, that morning, like a period at the end of a sentence I hadn't been allowed to read. I went inside. Her overnight bag was gone from the hook in the hallway. Her good toiletry case, the gray one, was gone from the bathroom counter. I stood there with sawdust still on my hands and called her name once, knowing she wasn't there, doing it anyway. There was a text from earlier that I hadn't seen. Going up Thursday, back Sunday. Don't wait on dinner. That was it. No love you, no miss you, not even the 5-letter name she'd signed texts with for the first 3 years we were together. I put the phone down on the counter and went back to the workshop and kept sanding because I had a client pickup on Saturday and because I didn't know what else to do with the particular kind of hurt that doesn't announce itself loudly. By 7 that evening, the quiet had taken on a different quality. Not peaceful. More like the quiet in a room after the power cuts out. You become aware of all the things that were humming that you never noticed until they stopped. Joe called at 7:22. Her name is Josephine, but she's been Joe since she was 6 years old and decided Josephine was a name for someone's great aunt, not a person who liked climbing trees. She was Helena's younger cousin, 29, a music teacher at an elementary school in New Haven. She had a laugh that entered a room before she did, and the kind of directness that Helena always described as a lot, and I had always privately thought of as refreshing. Joe and I didn't have the kind of relationship where we called each other. We saw each other at holidays, exchanged pleasantries, sat at the same end of the table at a cousin's wedding 2 summers ago, and talked for 4 hours about whether Springsteen's Nebraska was better experienced alone or with other people, and never once ran out of things to say. But we didn't call each other. When I answered, her voice was careful in a way that made the back of my neck go cold before she'd said more than 3 words. Blake, is Helena with you? I looked at the empty kitchen, the untouched wine rack, the single mug sitting where I'd left it at breakfast. She's in Vermont, wellness retreat with her work friends, Renata and those guys. A pause, not confused, careful. Blake, just my name, like she was trying to make it land gently. What? I saw Renata's story at 3 this afternoon. She was at her daughter's soccer game in West Hartford. I set down the spatula I'd been holding. Maybe she left early, or drove up separately. I called Dana too. I didn't say anything. Dana said there's no retreat, there's no trip. She hadn't talked to Helena in 2 weeks. The room didn't change. The refrigerator kept humming. The streetlight outside was doing what it always did. Everything was exactly the same and also completely different, the way it gets when one fact quietly rearranges all the others. She planned this, I said. The words came out flat. Not because I wasn't feeling anything, because I was feeling too many things at once, and none of them had found their shape yet. Joe exhaled slowly on the other end. I've been sitting with it for 3 hours. I didn't know if calling was the right thing. I'm glad you called. A beat. I'm coming over, she said. You don't have to do that. I know. The line went quiet. I'm already in the car. She arrived 40 minutes later. It had been raining most of the evening, that low, steady October rain that makes Connecticut look like something out of a film, and she pulled into the driveway with her headlights sweeping across the living room wall. I opened the door before she'd knocked. Jo stood on the porch, with her hair damp and her jacket pulled around her. She'd come straight from wherever she'd been when she made the decision to drive up. There was a lanyard still looped around her wrist, a small smudge of something blue on her left hand from school, silver earrings catching the porch light. She looked at my face, the way you look at someone when you're trying to figure out how much truth they can handle. Can I come in? Something about those 4 words, the smallness of them, the fact that she was asking like she understood this was still my space and she was a guest in whatever was happening inside it. Yeah, I said. Of course. She stepped past me into the warmth of the house, and I caught the smell of rain and something faintly herbal, like shampoo or tea tree soap. Not perfume, just clean, just her. You haven't eaten, she said, glancing at the stove. It wasn't a question, she was right. I was going to. Sure you were. She was already moving toward the kitchen with the ease of someone who wasn't a stranger to this space, so much as someone who had decided the space needed tending. She opened 2 cabinets before she found the mugs. Tea? Or something that'll actually knock you out? Tea's fine. I ask because I'd personally want something that'd knock me out, but I'm trying to be responsible. I almost laughed. She was trying to make me laugh. I could see the effort of it, the careful way she was keeping her voice slightly wry, keeping the panic at bay by doing something with her hands. She filled the kettle, set it on the burner, and then without turning around she said, "She texted me this morning. Helena." My chest tightened. What did she say? Jo turned. Her eyes were steady, but there was something working behind them. She reached into her jacket pocket and held the phone out. The text was time-stamped 8:47 a.m., about 2 hours after Helena would have left. "Jo, if Blake calls looking for me, just say, you don't know where I am. It's not your business, and it's not his. I'll explain when I'm ready." I read it twice, handed it back. She really thought you'd do that, I said. Jo set the phone face down on the counter. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. Then I thought about you sitting in this house not knowing where your wife was. She turned back to the kettle. So, no. The kettle started to hiss. The kitchen felt smaller than usual. Or maybe it felt the right size for the first time. What do you know? I asked. Jo poured the water slowly, carefully, like she was buying herself a few extra seconds with the task. I don't know for certain, she said, but 3 weeks ago Helena called me, said she wasn't sure about the marriage anymore, that she felt like you two had become different people. She paused. I asked her if there was someone else. And she said that was none of my business. Jo's voice went flat on those last words. Not angry, just tired of a sentence she'd been carrying. But she got defensive in a way that was very specific. I looked at the kitchen window, the dark glass of it, the rain. Right, I said. Jo turned and slid a mug across the counter. Chamomile, I noticed, not because I'd told her. She'd just guessed and gotten it right. We took the mugs to the living room and sat at opposite ends of the couch. The rain kept doing what October rain in Connecticut does. Steady, indifferent, filling the silence with something that almost sounded like company. You're not surprised, she said. I am and I'm not, both at once. She nodded slowly, like that made sense to her. How long has it been like this? The distance? Maybe a year, maybe longer. I wrapped both hands around the mug. You get used to a certain temperature. You stop noticing when it drops, because it drops 1 degree at a time. Joe's fingers tightened around her mug. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. I should have said something when she called me. I kept thinking, it's their marriage, it's not my lane. She shook her head. I watched it for a year and told myself it wasn't my place. Joe. I mean it. Her voice was quiet but solid. You deserved better than whatever she was giving you. I kept waiting for her to figure that out on her own. Something shifted in my chest, quietly, like a plank settling. That landed, I said. She looked at me a moment too long, then looked away first. Her phone buzzed on the cushion beside her. She picked it up, read it, and the color left her face. What? She didn't answer immediately. She just held the phone out to me. A text from Helena, sent 3 minutes ago. Joe, I can see his truck in the driveway and your car is there too. Whatever you think you're doing, stop. You always make everything about yourself. Go home. My first instinct was to go to the window. I did. Pulled the curtain aside. The street was empty except for the rain and a neighbor's porch light. No parked cars I didn't recognize. She drove by, Joe said from behind me. Or she had someone else do it. Joe was standing with her arms crossed over her chest, jaw set, doing the thing where she was deciding exactly how angry to let herself be. She's watching her own house, she said flatly, while she's somewhere she's not supposed to be. I let the curtain fall, Joe. She looked at me. I'm glad you're here, I said it plainly, because it was the plainest truth I had, and I didn't see the point in decorating it. Not because of this. Before any of this, I was in this house by myself, thinking I had somehow gotten used to being alone inside my own marriage. And then you called, and you came, and I haven't felt alone for the past 2 hours. Her arms uncrossed. Something in her face went soft in a way she tried to control and didn't quite manage. Blake, she said. I know, it's complicated. That's an extremely generous word for it. I have a large vocabulary. I'm trying to use it gently. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. Then she crossed to the couch and sat back down, and when I sat back down, the distance between us was somehow smaller, without either of us having made a decision about it. We stayed up until almost 1 in the morning piecing together what we could. Helena's location was off on her phone. The joint credit card showed no new charges since morning, but 3 months of statements told a story I hadn't been looking for. Hotel charges in Hartford on Thursday nights when she'd told me she was working late. 2 dinners at a restaurant we'd never been to together. A parking garage near a neighborhood we had no reason to be in. I'd been looking at these numbers every month. I had never looked at them. Joe sat next to me at the kitchen table with her chin in her hand, not saying anything while I went through the statements. When I closed the laptop, she said, "You didn't know." I should have. You trusted your wife. Her voice was quiet but solid. That's not a flaw. That's what trust is. I stared at the closed laptop. She's been lying for months. Yes. And I just went to work, came home, made dinner. Yes. Joe's hand came down on the back of mine on the table. Just briefly. Just enough. And that makes you the person who showed up, not the person who failed. I turned my hand over. She didn't move hers away. We stayed like that for a moment that stretched into several moments. Then she pulled back slowly, like she was reluctant to, and was trying not to show it. I should go, she said. It's late, and I don't. She stopped. You don't what? She looked at me honestly. I don't want to be the thing she's accusing us of being. Not yet. Not like this. Not yet. 2 words. They did a lot of work. Okay, I said. At the door, she stopped with her jacket half on and said without looking at me, when I said not yet, I meant it the way it sounded. I know. She looked at me then. Good. She drove home in the rain. I stood at the window for a while after her taillights disappeared. 3 days later, the attorney knocked on my door. I hadn't heard from Helena since the text about Joe's car in my driveway. I'd tried calling twice. Both went to voicemail. I left one message, calm, short, asking her to call me, and got nothing back. The attorney was a man named Walter Briggs, early 60s, gray raincoat, with the particular exhaustion of someone who has delivered bad news to strangers for 30 years. He handed me a manila envelope and told me Helena had retained him. Inside were divorce papers already signed and a single handwritten note on cream-colored stationery. Blake, I know this isn't what you expected. I should have been honest a long time ago. I wasn't brave enough. I'm sorry for that part. The rest, I think you'll figure out. Please don't fight this. H. I read it in the doorway, with Walter Briggs still standing on the front step. Then I called Jo. She arrived in 40 minutes. She read the note at the kitchen table and was quiet for a moment. She's not explaining the hotel charges, she said. No. She knows you found them. Probably. Jo set the note down carefully. She's hoping you'll sign everything fast so she can move on before you look harder. I had already thought of that. My family lawyer, a woman in New London named Patricia, who'd handled my parents' estate, had called me back that morning. She told me to sign nothing yet. Helena was asking for the house, which had been mine before the marriage, purchased with money from my grandfather's estate. The renovation work we'd done together during the marriage complicated things, but it didn't make it hers. What complicated things more was what Patricia found when I gave her 3 months of credit card statements. She was in Hartford, Patricia told me, staying at the Goodwin Hotel on Thursday nights, on and off for 6 months. The second name on the reservation was Orion Hollis. He's a senior vice president at her firm. There it was. Not a surprise, exactly. More like hearing a diagnosis for something you'd half suspected for a while, not wanting to be right. Connecticut, Patricia explained, still recognizes adultery as grounds, and it mattered in how we approached the house. Helena's attorney had been positioning as though the affair either didn't exist or began after separation. The hotel record said otherwise. We had documentation. That changed the negotiation. Jo came with me to every meeting with Patricia. Not because she had to, because she showed up early, with coffee, and sat in the chair beside me and didn't try to manage what I was feeling. She just made sure I wasn't alone in rooms where people were calmly dismantling the architecture of the last 5 years of my life. In the courthouse parking lot after the second meeting, she said, "You're doing better than you think." "I'm functioning," I said. "That's different." "It's a start." She handed me the other coffee. She always brought 2, and looked out the windshield at the November sky. "Can I say something?" "You're going to, regardless." "I noticed you," she said, quietly, looking at the sky. "Before any of this. I want to be honest about that, because I don't want us to build anything on a version of events that leaves it out." I was quiet. Not. I wasn't plotting anything. I wasn't hoping your marriage would fall apart. She turned to look at me. "I just noticed the way you listened. The way you remembered my students' names 3 months after I mentioned them once. The way you knew which mug was my favorite at Christmas because you'd paid attention the year before." She shook her head, and then I felt guilty for thinking it. "Jo, I'm serious. I spent a long time feeling awful about something that was just noticing, being a person who noticed another person." I turned in my seat. "I noticed you too." She met my eyes, waited. "And I buried it," I said. "Put it under everything practical. I'm married. She's family. This is just friendship. Told myself that what I felt around you was just contrast, that you felt easy to talk to because Helena and I had stopped talking." I looked at my hands. Maybe that was part of it, but it wasn't all of it. Jo was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the console and put her hand over mine. "We can't start here," she said. "Not while everything's still in motion." "I know. But don't let me pretend later that nothing happened between now and then." I turned my hand over and held hers. "I won't." The divorce took 4 months. Helena pushed hard on the house through December, then went quiet in January. Patricia suspected Helena's own attorney had looked at the hotel records and the timeline and advised her that the position wasn't sustainable. The house stayed mine. The accounts were separated cleanly. It was finished on a gray Tuesday at the end of February, with almost no ceremony. I drove back from the courthouse alone and sat in my truck in the parking lot of the workshop for a long time. Not grieving, exactly. Not relieved, exactly. Something in between. The particular stillness that comes when a noise you've been living inside for years finally stops, and you have to learn what quiet actually sounds like. when nothing is wrong with it. My phone buzzed. "Joe, how are you?" I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Ask me in person." Her reply came in under a minute. "Is that an invitation?" Yes, I typed, an actual one. Dinner, not hypothetically. 3 dots appeared. Stayed there for almost a full minute. "I know a place in New Haven with terrible lighting and excellent oysters. You look emotionally available enough for oysters." I laughed out loud, alone in the truck. "Saturday," I typed. "I'll pick you up at 6. She sent back one word, finally. I wore the blue flannel she'd once told me looked like I was trying just enough, which is the correct amount. She opened the door before I knocked, in a dark green dress with her hair loose, and I had prepared something to say and forgot it entirely. "You look," I started. "Don't make it weird," she said. "We've been almost everything for 4 months. You're allowed to just say it." "You look beautiful." She smiled in the way she had when she was trying not to. There it is. Dinner was oysters and sourdough, and a Riesling she picked because she said Chablis is for impressing people you don't actually like. We talked about her students. One of them had written her a song for the winter concert, 7 notes long, all in the key of C, titled in crayon. For Mrs. Joe, who is my favorite. We talked about the boat I was working on, a 1962 Herreshoff sloop. Someone had found under a tarp in a barn in Rhode Island, her ribs intact and most of her hull still sound despite decades of neglect. We talked about her grandmother's handmade quilt that Joe had framed instead of using because she was too afraid of ruining it, and whether that was honoring something or just being afraid of it. At some point, the restaurant got quieter around us, and neither of us noticed until the server came to clear the last plates. Outside, the February air was honest about being cold. She slipped her hand into mine before I'd reached for it, and I felt her exhale beside me like something she'd been holding had finally let go. We walked along the harbor. The water was black and silver under the dock lights. "I keep waiting for it to feel complicated," she said. "Does it?" She thought about it. "No, that's the strange part." She glanced over at me. "Shouldn't it feel more complicated?" "Maybe we already did the complicated part," I said. "Maybe 4 months of carefully not crossing a line was the complicated part, and this is just what's on the other side of it." Joe stopped walking. I stopped too. She looked at me with the same look she'd had in my living room in October, the one that was trying to be careful and was giving up on it. "Blake," she said. "Yeah. Stop being reasonable and just." I kissed her before she finished the sentence. Her hands came up and found my jacket collar, and she kissed me back like she'd made a decision she wasn't second-guessing. The harbor was dark and cold and full of boats that needed tending, and none of that mattered at all. When we stepped back, she rested her forehead against my chin. "That was not a gray area," she said. "No, that was very clear." "Good." She looked up. "Because I'm done with gray areas. They're exhausting." "Noted." Her mouth curved. "Ask me something." I looked at her. At the silver earrings catching the dock light. At the woman who had driven to my house in October rain because she decided I shouldn't be alone with a lie. Who had sat through 4 months of legal meetings and bad courthouse coffee and done it without asking for anything back. Who had said not yet in a way that already contained the answer to later. "Joe," I said. "Yes?" "Do you want to come see the boat tomorrow?" She blinked. Then she laughed. "The real kind. The kind that arrived before she could stop it. That's what you're leading with? The boat?" "She's a 1962 Herreshoff. She's beautiful. She needs a lot of work." I held her gaze. "I thought you might want to see something worth restoring." Joe looked at me for a long moment. The laugh faded into something quieter and truer. "Yeah," she said softly. "I'd like that." I held her hand on the walk back. The harbor moved dark and quiet beside us. Somewhere across the water, a boat rocked gently against its mooring. Patient, unhurried, waiting for the kind of care that takes time and means something. I knew how to give that. I'd always known how. I just needed, finally, to find the right thing to give it to.